Okay. All right. Well, hello, everybody. Um, I will, let's get started. Um, I can edit this, so we'll see. Yeah, so, hey, everybody. This is my debut BookTube episode. And I'm sure I'll get better as time goes. And I'm sure, right, like everyone, your anxiety, uh, well, my anxiety is like a freight train. But first of all, I guess I should introduce myself. I don't, yeah, my name is Joe. You call me Joe. It's actually, my writing name is Joseph Miyasato. I'm an author. I've got my two books back there, and I figured it was about time for me to make a BookTube channel for a number of reasons. And I'm just going to go right to these tags here. Um, I would have liked my screen to be on here. Here's my blog. It's my writer's Bible, which I'm going to put a link to my BookTube. But let's go ahead. I found this very helpful. I just actually saw this AI. There was an AI overview, but I just scrolled down, and the first one I came across was Words and Other Malarkey. So shout out to Words and Other Malarkey. I've actually not heard this before, but this is actually a nice transcript of questions and answers. So let's go ahead and just go ahead and answer this. So why did you start this channel? All right, so I started this channel for a place to talk about books. Huh. I've loved so many of the channels. I think the very first channel I came across was Leaf by Leaf. I absolutely love Leaf by Leaf. I think it's Chris Via, if I might be mistaken. But his oh my gosh, his reading level just puts me to shame. There's What's Better Than Food has been another great one. There's been a few others. I've kind of interacted a little bit online, and I just like watching. However, I have some passionate disagreement with Better Than Food on his Crime and Punishment review, which is fine. We all have our own opinions. I just disagree. But his opinion, he didn't like Crime and Punishment's not better than food. But to me, oh my gosh, it's a feast. It's a course. And so there's been a few moments like that where I've just been like, man, this is one of my incentive to create a channel is because I have things to add. Um, Also, I love the idea of really deep reading, which a lot of you talk about, and I've learned so much from each one of you. I learned that I'm just not as deep a reader as I would like to be, and so I right. So I have some tabs. I have things like that. I have the best pens, the Pilot G2, the .38. That's my favorite. For note taking in the margins. But yeah, so there's been a number of reasons. Also, man, conspiracy against humanity. Oh my gosh, I want to just lay that out flat. To me, it's. I know a lot of people love that book, but to me, it's just. It's a book that makes me want to write a book in response. So there's a lot of reasons why I'm starting this channel. Those are just a few of them. What are some fun and unique things you can bring to YouTube? Well, I'm an author and I've self-published. In what I'll show you in the portable. I love this title. This is a portable manual fiction. I published this in 2007. It was a chapbook, and I was driving cab. I was in Boise, and I was driving taxi cab. I just call it cab. um, I was a taxi driver. I was not like Travis Bickle. although I did see some pretty gory things. But yeah, so I wrote this. I was selling it. I dropped out of college. I was just trying to survive, and I wrote this book. I printed it myself. I designed it. I sold it out. I sold all copies, and what the honest thing is, I had to justify why I was even doing it to a couple idiots. I shouldn't say that, but yeah. So and then I published this book in 2018. There's so many. This is another collection, the Anti-Hero and the Disciple. If you can kind of see, there's a poster I had made, and I did a promo at a bookstore. Shout out to Pioneer Book. So I was there, and there's so many people who are way better, they're just more, they've read more than I have. I have wasted a lot of time. And various reasons, but I have wasted a lot of reading time, and I really really want to kick my reading up. So actually, if this I've been curating this list, so my reading year 2025 is what I'm calling it. These are the books I'd like to get to, and I hope to get to most of them. I feel like reading at least one Dostoevsky a year, until I can make it full time as an author. That's doable. The Bell Jar, of course. Anyway, I could spend too long. I don't want to make this thing forever. So let's go to the questions. So anyway, what can I bring to YouTube? I just think that I have a unique personality. I also write, and I read, and I feel like I'm a pretty good observer of human nature. I also have different interests than a lot of people. I have religious interests, philosophical interests, psychological interests, literary interests, and so there's going to be things that I read that other people don't read. Um, I am 1% Jewish, so I like to exploit that. No, but I love reading about Jewish authors and things like that. So um, let's see. What are you most excited about for your channel? I mean, so I have always been very reluctant to make videos. I don't like making videos, and it's because I have anxiety. But I've decided to just smash through my anxiety. Who cares? Whatever. And just pile through it. There's been a lot of books on anxiety, and I haven't read any of them. But who was it? John Jones. I'm a fan of UFC. I don't follow it very closely these days, but I am a fan. And one of the greatest fighters of all time, John Jones. He was talking about anxiety, and he kind of motivated me. And he says, "Look, I use it. I just use it as a tool, as a powerful tool, and a little bit that I have read about anxiety, just the power that anxiety, right? It's just a neutral power. If it's negative, right? Sure, it can be negative, but it can be positive too. And if I just view it as a negative, as a neutral power, it's like there's a power source there, and it's very powerful. It's very strong. And so if I can use that and harness it for positive good, then hey, let's do it. I do love reading. Why do I love reading? You know, I love reading. I love reading very early on. I wrote very early on, but I had a very unfortunate upbringing that was very difficult. And as a result, all I did wanted to do was to just run away from my life. And so I stopped reading. But I remember going to the library as a kid. So I grew up in Boise, Idaho, and that library down there. Great history of that library there, by the way. That library, it's great. It has an exclamation point, a mark on the library and exclamation. And what's cool about it is there's this great pizza place in Boise called the Flying Pie Pizzeria. It's famous for Boise, and those guys actually put the money. They donated the money. I don't think for the whole sign. I think it's just for the exclamation. It could have been for the whole sign. It's just so great. But I remember there was like this giant dragon in display. There was always these great like little trinkets and knickknacks and figurines and stuff. And so I would go there a lot as a kid. My mom would bring us there, and so I just fell in love with reading. And I remember I was in Massachusetts visiting my grandpa when I was 12, and I was there, and all I did was like work. And my sister got taken out shopping all the time, and I just worked outside, which actually I'm very appreciative now, even though I hated it at the time. But my grandpa was he had this big property, but he didn't have anything in his house for entertainment. All he had was a tiny little TV, a black and white TV, and he just watched baseball. And I didn't like baseball, so I remember wandering around the house and just, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And the beautiful gift of boredom, such a beautiful gift. And I discovered Alice in Wonderland and The Hobbit, and those just right, no distractions. 12-year-old little boy, overactive imagination, and still to this day, those are two of my favorite books. So I love reading for a lot of reasons. I remember when I went to college. I was a horrible student in high school, but I did was a natural at English, very natural, and I would get my only good grades would be in English. But I had a lot of PTSD. I was just checked out, and so I what was it? Um, but I remember I went to college. I didn't know how to study. I had to learn how to study, and I remember there was this history class, and we got assigned Arthur Kessler, Darkness at Noon. That book just blew me away, and I remember before this is pre like ubiquitous usage of the internet. Like the internet existed, sure, but really we didn't use it very much. And I remember searching for that book. Bookstore after bookstore after bookstore. There was a lot more bookstores back then. This is before, like this is like what, 98. So it's, before, Barnes and Noble, Border, those giant stores, which now, I love the fact that Barnes and Noble is around just because there's not very many bookstores around. So there was I remember I just went to all the bookstores, and I would ask the clerk, "Hey, do you have Arthur Koestler's Darkest and Noon?" And I did this, multiple days. And I remember walking around, and I remember walking down to my right. I'm walking down, and I see, in the display case, there's the book. Oh my gosh, that book! It just uh, I think I've only read it two, maybe three times, and it needs a reread. But there was also when I started reading a lot. Again, I guess one of my big influences when I started reading a lot was uh, J.D. Salinger's "Raise the Roof Beams Carpenter" and Seymour Introduction. This is a world I didn't know. Uh, I, my dad had books everywhere, but he never talked to me. He never talked to me about books. They were just there all over in the house, which I'm grateful for that they were just there. Um, and so this intellectual family, right, that Salinger's talking about, where everyone's reading, everyone's right, like it's just blew me away. And then I remember there was this bookstore in Boise that I just loved. It was called the Wild Hare Bookstore. So if anyone knows that, I'd love to see it in the comments. But oh my gosh, that bookstore, it like kind of breaks my heart that it went away, and it actually died because just down the road, Barnes and Noble, Borders plopped their big butts right down across from the street from each other. So, and anyway, then later, Borders dies, Barnes and Noble stays. But that bookstore, I discovered reading. I discovered really reading on my own. I think really reading. I used to escape with drugs and alcohol and everything, and so when I started going to school, started going to college, it kind of was like I was such a serious student that I just kind of gave up. drinking and doing drugs and all that stuff. And I was pretty. It was like drugstore cowboy. I wasn't robbing stuff, but that was my whole. That was how my brain was, right? So if you've seen drugstore cowboy, um, and so I started reading a lot, and I remember I would get these little penguin. What were they called? They were little penguins. They were very thin and they were very small. They're orange. I don't remember what they're called now. I'm sure I can look them up. But somebody in the comments, let me know what they are. But they were thin, and I used to just devour those, and I devour Samuel French's collection of plays, and I still have a bunch of them that I used to read. And so I read a lot of plays. And I think one of the very first H.G. Wells, The Time Machine, that book, oh my gosh, just this idea of the separation of classes, right? The Murlocs, and how they were viewed as essentially essential, but you just don't want to see them. Like they were like, and so that just, I don't know, that opened me up to what literature can do for ideas. And I remember something else. Anyway, there was just so many moments like that. Sitting at that bookstore, walking through the bookstore, just searching through the bookstore before Goodreads, before anything. You just had to kind of rely on your instincts. I didn't have any. I had no kind of role models or no, guys smarter than me, mentors. I had no mentors, and so in fact, that may be one of the reasons why in the novel I just love my mentor who I created. Yesterday, I'm writing a novel, and yet you see, 2 days ago, 2 days ago, I gave him changed his eye color, gray eyes. It's very very rare. So hey, if you have gray eyes, give a shout out to your gray eyes in the comments. Let's see. So there's a lot of reasons I love reading. What book series? I am not a big series guy. In fact, I've only read a few series. I read the Hunger Games series just because I thought I should learn how to write a series. But I don't. I love good sci-fi. I love good sci-fi. I feel like there's probably some other genres that I'm missing out on that I just not a big genre reader. And so, but yeah, so I mean, every time it was trying to get through the Lord of the Rings, I was in college and I'd get to Tom Bombadil and I get kind of tired. And so I'm like, stop it, Tom. I've got so many things to study. So, I love reading, like Dostoevsky, and I like reading heavy literature. I love, philosophy. I like magic realism. I love fairy tales as well. I love reading like myths and those types of things. And so, anyway, let's see. Boom, boom, boom. What question would you ask your favorite booktubers? Um, I don't know. I mean, I just like watching a good quality booktube. Um, I tend to. I don't know. I'm so new to it. I'm not going to critique it at all. What challenges will be hardest with booktube? I think just finding time. I mean, with work and with I have a little baby and my wife, and I've got my church stuff, and I've got everything you have when you're a human being. But I think just consistency will be hard. I think finding the time. Again, this is my first one. So, and then, my anxiety is going to be pretty heavy sometimes. I don't like watching myself. I don't think I'm as bad as Adam Driver. I heard he walked out on Terry Gross one time, which I admire him. She kept showing him, how she kind of gets coy and plays these little passive aggressive games. But yeah. So, when did you start reading? I think I talked about that a little bit. Yeah, again, was read a lot as a kid. I remember, so I was in elementary, we go to the library. I don't know if they still do that. I mean, I think they do, right? But I just remember being in elementary. They take us to the library. I'd read BMX bike magazines with my friends. We just loved those. But two series I would always get. One was a yellow hardback series of myths from all over the world, and it just fascinated me. And so I just love the weirdness, the strangeness of myths. That's one of the reasons I like love lots of the Old Testament. There's just weird things in it, and I just love that. I love kind of that lens of looking at the world with the slightly fantastic, poetic kind of right a union kind of lens. Well, pre-union really, but now it's union. Joseph Campbell, but pre that because right, you're just a kid. You're learning this stuff. And then Madeline books. I just love. I like the paintings. I think they're cute. Well, so I had five sisters, and so I liked the Madeline books. Um, where do you read? I listen to a lot of audiobooks. Years ago, I was doing litigation research in Salt Lake, and I love music. Man, I just love music. I think it's just something I've always loved since I was a kid. And some of my favorite bands, right? Radiohead, especially the first six albums. Destroyer, just love Destroyer. Um, you know, um, uh, you know, um, Nico Case. There's just a lot of. I used to grow up on hip hop, things like that. But I decided I was right. So you listen to Spotify, and I was bothering me how little I was reading between commuting and having a all. And really, this society we live in discourages reading, and so you kind of right. I kind of bought into that. I don't know why. I kind of bought into that. Um, and right, like learning to escape in unhealthy ways as a child of difficult circumstances. That's like you learn how to escape. So, well, and I didn't escape through reading, man. I did not escape through reading. Well, um, what was I say? Oh, and so I listened to a lot of anyway. So I'm listening to music, and I'm thinking like, look, I should give up music for more reading, and that spiked my reading up. So I'm averaging maybe 40 books a year, which is not very much. It just bothers me that I'm not averaging more. So really, BookTube has really inspired me to sit down and read more. I mean, I bought a new nice reading chair. It's just down there. I bought it a couple months ago. Just like I have to read more. So that where do I read? I read everywhere. What kind of books do you read? I think I've talked about that. So anyway, I think that's a good intro. Um, this really is about books and my writing. You could find, so I'll just tell you a little bit about my writer's Bible. So, this is really, I have, right, like so many of us who write or, you use your bookmarks. I use Google, so I have all these wonderful bookmarks and everything. But really, it's just really hard to keep track of everything. And I have spreadsheets, a gigantic spreadsheet of literary magazines and different tiers and huge. And I have all of these resources that I've used throughout the years. And I was like, man, I really need to put those all in one spot. And so this is why this was born. So it's a slow build. I'm slowly building it out. There's tons of stuff that's not even that I have way more. I just haven't had time to build this out. But anyway, you can read a little bit about me here. You can also, so if you go to home, go to about me, you can also find, you can find my website here. So there's my website. Anyway, I am on X, so you can look me up on X. But please subscribe. I am pretty far along in the novel. I am going to be building a mailing list. I'm a typical author. I'm horrible. I hate the idea of publicity. I hate the idea of promotion, but you just have to do it. You have to. But I want to give back, right? And I think BookTube is a great a great source for that. There's so many people that gave me inspiration, right? So like, there's so many people that I just can sit there at their feet and listen to it. Whether they're younger than me or whatever, they just read so much, and they're such good readers. But then there's people on BookTube that don't it's my phone, that don't read as much as I do and are very new. And I this girl, she gave great advice, but she's been writing for 6 years. She has an agent now. She writes totally different stuff than I do, but she has stuff to teach me. I think we all, like a little baby, has something to teach me, right? So I don't care. I'm a student, and so anyway, I hope what I have can contribute to the conversation or whatever. Um, but I'll try to be a good citizen, a netizen, or booktubian. So, but yeah, so check out my stuff, right? But yeah, so anyway, yeah, I'll talk at you later. Okay, see ya. Thanks for listening.